It's not what's between your eye and the lens, it's what's between your ears that makes a difference. You can give a good photographer any camera, and it doesn't matter what camera they have. They can have a Diana camera, they can have a iPhone, they can have a $30,000 Hasselblad. It's what's between the ears that puts that image together.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Photo Forward podcast, where we explore the stories behind some of the greatest visual storytellers in the world. From their photographic origins to finding work-life balance as creative professionals, to how to actually make a living as a photographer, videographer, or multimedia creator. We uncover what makes them tick and their shutters click. I'm your host, Ben Brewer. Associated Press, the AP. If you follow the editorial, photojournalism, or news photography world, you already know that organization is a heavy hitter. For those of you that don't, the AP is a global news agency and wire service with over 200 bureaus in over 100 countries, and a hefty stack of Pulitzers to boot, since their founding around 100 years ago. And so, if you, as a photographer, could put AP contributor or stringer in your bio, that carried a hell of a lot of weight. But the world has changed since the heydays of wire service photography and newsgathering. As newspapers struggle to reinvent their business model in a digital world, that pushes organizations like the AP, Reuters, AFP, and more to cut back on the number and regularity of contributor content. But you're thinking, yeah, that's a great sob story, Ben, but why should I care? My photography work is totally different. Everybody thinks they're immune to the democratization of visuals, but the truth is, we're all vulnerable. If you don't intentionally reinvent yourself and adapt to our new visual world, you'll get left behind all the same. That's why I brought on today's guest, an AP photographer and all-around great guy. Andy Manis started his freelance business in 1995 and has been going strong ever since. Manis began his career in photography in 1980. He's held wire positions as a college staff photographer at newspapers, a photo editor for wire service, and an educator. Some of Andy's clients include the University of Wisconsin, Wisconsin State Journal, Getty Images, the Associated Press, the New York Times, Washington Post, USA Today, among many others. Manis lives in Madison with his wife and stepdaughter, where they both love to cook and enjoy the outdoors. In today's episode, Andy and I break down how adapting your freelance work to the changing state of photography is critical, why sometimes the best marketing tactic is just making face-to-face connections, and the importance of telling a unique story, even in a single photo. We even get into the nuts and bolts of taking care of yourself as a freelancer, and some tips Andy has for avoiding burnout. So, without further ado, my interview with freelance photographer, Andy Manis. All right, Andy Manis, welcome to the Photo Forward podcast.
Thanks for having me, Ben. It sounds great here.
Right, absolutely. Well, I guess we kind of get started on a lot of these start at the beginning, really. I guess, tell me about those kind of first kind of time you thought about getting into photography.
Well, it was kind of a long process. So when I was a kid, my father worked on this 200-acre, it was called Plant Introduction Station, where they introduced plants to the United States, and they had a darkroom. So, had access to a darkroom, and, the magic of darkroom was pretty cool. And so, I had little brownie cameras. And
how old were you then?
Oh, probably 8, 10 years old, something like that. Mm-hmm. He traveled a lot overseas. So then when we were younger, we traveled a lot overseas, but he always put me to work. So I picked a lot of weeds and bought myself doing garden work around the house and working for some other, starting that freelance thing early, so, so made enough money, and I bought me he went off to Asia, and he brought back a Minolta SRT 101.
Ah, okay. Where you grow up?
Well, sort of a lot some overseas, and then was born in Costa Rica, lived in Ceylon, Sri Lanka, Nigeria, Miami, Florida, and then last year high school I was in Bangkok, Thailand. having a little fun in Bangkok while my parents were up in northern Thailand.
Wow.
And but yeah, so anyway, he bought me he brought back this Minolta, and I started it, and then in high school I did the yearbook. This is in Bangkok, Thailand. I did yearbook stuff, and the first time we processed film at this school in Bangkok, we were putting the film in the wash, and the water tanks were on top of the roof. And so the water was very warm. So the emulsion fell off the film.
Oh.
So we got coolers. They ordered up coolers, so we were able to move on. So in high school I did the yearbook, and like, okay, and then I came back to the States and like, what am I going to do? So I was interested in I always sort of dabbled in graphics arts, and so I started a program at a graphics art school, but I really couldn't draw. I had friends. This was the beauty part. I had a roommate who was a really good artist, so I'd have him do my artwork for me. But it was like after about a year, like, well, maybe that's not really a good way to advance my career. So I just ended up getting a general arts degree, general English degree, in a 2-year degree. And then we had to move back to Gainesville, Florida, because my father had cancer, and so the family, we were all kind of all over the place, and we all gathered back in Gainesville, and I started back up at this community college, a 2-year college, and started working as a photographer for the community college, and I did that. I was in school, and then it turned into a full-time job. Well, I did that for a couple of years, and like, it wasn't really all that interesting.
What prompted you to start working or doing photography for the community college?
Like what connections?
Just connections.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I hate to say it. That's really a lot of how I moved things on was connections. So
that'll be an important theme for the rest of the episode.
It really is. It really is. I hate to say it, but it really is. So and then I had some friends who were photojournalists at the Gainesville Sun. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. So then I finished. I got my 4-year degree at the University of Florida. My first job was at a paper in Passaic, New Jersey, right across it's Patterson Passaic area, kind of across the Hudson River. I was there for a little about a year, and they got a new editor. I mean, there's a lot of action there. There was a lot of spot news.
What appealed to you about the newspaper world?
Because you see so much. Every day is different.
Yeah.
I mean, every day is different, and you see, you work on stories, and I can't sit still.
Yeah.
I like to see stuff happening.
So you kind of went from your kind of natural world early on, kind of photography, and then a little into kind of something different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the longest I've lived in one place, so I've lived here in Madison for 22 years, but prior to that, it was like 11 years in Gainesville, and prior to that, it was like 2 years here, a year here, 2 years. So I, did a lot of moving around, which, I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, you're not the only photographer I've interviewed that said that they get bored easily and they have to move around and do something different all the time.
I think would be a common theme with because and that's the beauty of it is you get to see stuff, you get to meet people all the time. Mm-hmm. I went to New Jersey. I left there after a year because the editor came from, I swear to God, from the National Enquirer, and he was doing some really weird things there. So then I went to a kind of a small, that was about a circulation about 80,000. And then I went to a small paper, about 20,000 in Bristol, Connecticut, which had the Bristol Press, which had a great reputation as a photo paper. I went there for about a year or two, but it was just, there was great opportunities for photos, but it was just too small of an environment for me. So a friend of mine, connection here, was an AP photo editor in Chicago, a college friend. And I said, I'm interested. So sure enough, I packed up the U-Haul and moved to Chicago and became a picture editor. And like when I was in college, I was a photo editor and art director and stuff like that. So, I kind of like that. And so that would have been in, 89. 87, 89 that I moved to Chicago, and it was very early. At that time, we started out with wet darkrooms, but we had everything was sort of done computer-wise. We had a very rudimentary computer, and that's how we send pictures. And at that time, it was you'd send a picture. It was like a high-speed fax machine. Mm-hmm. So it would take 8 minutes to transmit one picture.
I want to repeat that for the audience again. This is the way they used to do it at the AP.
And it was one pic. That's a black and white, and so a color would be you do that 3 times for all 3 colors. So, yeah.
Wow, we don't know how good we got it nowadays.
But things changed. During the time I was there, it was the early digital cameras, which $34,000 cameras, and we went the transition from actually making wet prints, from making negatives to wet prints, and it was a drum. It was called a drum transmitter. It would spin around and that's why it'd take 8 minutes. And then they got the leaf scanner, which would scan the negative, and that kind of speeded up things. Mm-hmm. And then they started sending pictures over the satellite, which immensely speeded up things. Mm-hmm. But it was still the cameras are still wet, still film-based cameras. Mm-hmm. And about that time, I'd been there about 6 years, and like, this
is in Chicago, right?
This is still in Chicago. I was like, yeah, this is interesting, but I kind of want to move on. Mm-hmm. I want to get back into photography.
Yeah.
And because I'd done it earlier, and so I had a friend who was the AP freelancer here in Madison. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, yeah, let me check. There's another guy who's a kind of interesting position, but he might get hired by the Wisconsin State Journal. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, he got hired. And earlier in my career, I had the opportunity to freelance. I did an internship at the Fort Lauderdale News Sun-Sentinel. Mm-hmm. And they said, do you want to freelance? And I said, they were going to offer me, I think, $400 a week. I said, no, I need a full-time job. And I took this full-time job that paid about $220 a week.
Ooh.
So I'm like, sort of scratching my head like, maybe I should go try this freelancing thing.
Yeah.
So I moved up to Madison again, packed up my U-Haul, moved up to Madison. No connection, true connection. I have my great-great-grandfather was an architect in Madison. There's some buildings that was designed by him, and I have a cousin who lived here, but it was just like new city, new place, go. Mm-hmm. So moved up here, and that was in 95, and so we've been going strong since.
Wow. You've really seen, the industry. You've seen the industry change a lot. I mean, as a freelancer, as an editor, I mean,
it changes constantly. Yeah, it's changing as we speak. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll get into kind of your kind of thoughts about, freelancing now, since you've kind of seen it, because I think people have the idea in their head of like the olden days of, well, I'm going to go be a stringer. I'm going to go be a freelancer. I'm going to do this. And I don't know that everybody understands the kind of state of the freelance union. And so we'll get into that a little bit more, but I kind of want to go back to kind of, you've moved around a lot, you've done a lot. Tell me about kind of a memorable risk that you've taken in your career.
Well, I mean, risk is moving up here. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think I took all these little risks, that's probably the biggest risk is, again, or even going to Chicago I'd never been a photo editor before. I mean, not in being the AP photo editor is kind of, as I joked with the big boss one time who came and visited us, and it's kind of like being a short order cook, because you're just flipping burgers. Mm. It's when each picture took 8 minutes, and we were distributing pictures to 17 states. Mm-hmm. So you had this board where you'd send pictures out. Yeah. And you'd have to split, sometimes. But anyway, it was a challenge. I guess I don't know if it's a risk or a challenge. I enjoy those challenges more. Yeah. And then moving up here, it was, yeah.
Okay. So since you've moved here, have you been a freelancer?
Totally.
Yep.
The whole 100%.
Totally freelance. Wow. And how many years has that been, you said?
Well, it'll be 23 years. 23 years. 95.
Yeah. What do you credit the kind of longevity of your freelance career here to?
A lot of luck.
Go on.
I mean, luck and being at the right place at the right time and being good. I mean, I think it's, it's crazy. I mean, it's all word of mouth. My clients have changed. I used to do a lot of newspaper magazine stuff, but that's changed. But just being in the environment and treating people, I guess, properly and getting your work done efficiently, fast. Word gets out, I guess, that quality matters. Yeah,
quality and persistence probably too. Because I'm sure things probably were a little tough in the beginning. I mean, tell me a little bit about how it worked out.
It was pretty
first
lucky.
couple of years.
Because back then I was doing a lot of work for AP, a lot of work. That has changed drastically. I do very little work for AP these days. But yeah, I mean, I think the first week I was here, they were voting on the Brewers Stadium at the Capitol, and it was exciting. There was because there's Hank Aaron, and he's walking, and he's going into some legislature's, and there's Bud Selig, and they were watching. This is also the time of O.J. Simpson's trial, so we were watching. At the time, the legislators were talking about the Brewers. They were voting, or they were the O.J. Simpson was. I can't remember if it was the trial. It was some part of the O.J. Simpson thing that was going on, and so you had this whole room of baseball people watching the TV. And this was like this wasn't a flat screen TV. This was rabbit ears, because I got behind the TV and you could see the rabbit ears, and
everybody crowded around a TV about the size of a piece of paper.
Exactly. Yeah. And made for a good picture.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
And, the boss who I was working for was like, and at the time he was still a freelancer, or no, I guess he was the AP staffer, but he's still living in Madison, and he had a darkroom out of his house, and so we had to go back and process film and scan it up.
Yeah. I guess that kind of gets into, you said you were a little lucky kind of getting here. What's your process for kind of finding new clients maybe, or trying to develop those relationships? Because you said they've changed a lot over the years. How do you do it?
I'm knocking on my head. I've been very lucky. Some of the clients, I had early on, but they've extended, or were just able to. A lot of it is just word of mouth that it just sort of keeps on growing. I've never advertised. I've never sent out. I should send out flyers.
And I haven't seen an Andy Manis Facebook page.
I have an Andy Manis, but not an Andy Manis photography. And that's what, so that's, I don't do, I've done weddings, but I don't do them as per se. There was, early in my career, I did a couple, like, this isn't fun. And then I've done, 3 or 4 years ago, was doing one a summer. And some of it I was doing a second shooter, and, I just hand off the cards to someone, and that was kind of nice. But
tell me a little bit about, during your career, tell me about a memorable assignment or a project that was really challenging, that was really tough. Like, take me to one of those.
Well, I think the biggest assignment I ever did was the protests at the Capitol. So I was there basically 22 days, not consecutive days, but pretty much those 22 days straight. And you'd have to get there early in the morning, because if you didn't, you couldn't find parking. So you'd have to get there 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. You were there until 8, 9 o'clock at night. And you'd take pictures, go in and transmit, go take more pictures, go transmit. You just do this all day long. And there were huge crowds. 10,000s of people. And
what year was that again?
2010.
2010, yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of adrenaline rush, but it was also a drain. And then kind of the bummer is I was taking a vacation on the day that the governor signed the legislation. I was out of town. So I missed that picture.
The end of the story,
exactly.
Effectively.
Yeah, exactly. But I had this vacation plan. I was like, nah.
Well, that's good that you kind of I wanted to ask about eventually work-life balance, because I think as a freelancer, it's tough to find, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But it's good that you kind of recognize, what am I going to do?
Right. It's life. Yeah. You can only do so much. Yeah.
So when you're covering something like that for so long, I mean, covering like a long-term developing thing, how do you find those unique angles on it, or how do you not shoot the same shit 22 days in a row?
That's what I find so fascinating by photography, that I love so much, is I'm always looking for different angles. And I'll be on a shoot, and I'll see, this is kind of crazy. I'll see someone else shoot. You watch other photographers, like, if you move over here, you could get a much, much more interesting picture if you just stand there in the front of the podium. You're always, to me, I'm always pushing. And I think that's a testament of why I'm able to sustain my work, is that I do look for angles. That's what drives me, is I'm always looking for a better picture, a best picture. There are times it was like at the Capitol during this, I asked to go up on what's called the Trumpeter Ring, which is it's a view of the Capitol, of the rotunda from high up, and they're like, no, that doesn't make a good picture. I'm like, no, yes, it does. And actually, what ended up finally on one of the days that the Capitol was the crowdest, someone from the grounds crew, or whatever you want to call them, the maintenance people, he said, hey, come on up. And they got us up there, and it made these amazing pictures. And it was actually looking back at them, or toning them, it was like, why does it look so foggy? Because it was so hot. There was like a mist, because there was probably 10,000 people inside the Capitol.
Yeah.
And it was cold. It was in February, or January, actually, at that point.
So the steam rising from all the bodies in there. Wow. Yeah. In your career, what have been some of those kind of roadblock moments you think that you've gotten over, or gotten through, or just said, screw it, I'm going to try something different? Or what are those kind of roadblocks you think you've probably hit along the way?
I don't see them as roadblocks. I just persevere. It's luck, being at the right place at the right time. Roadblocks were like, I had an editor that was horrible. I got tired. That's why it's...
Tell me more about that. Like, how do you work through a difficult relationship with an editor?
Well, I'm a pretty amenable kind of person. I'm pretty low-key person. And I just work around. I just find... I guess earlier in my career, when I worked at the college newspaper, it was an independent newspaper, the Florida Alligator. I had some real confrontations with editors, arguing with them, like, it didn't get you anywhere. So I just, the more adult I got, it's like, I can solve this other ways. Just work around it and get through it.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think age and maturity goes a long way to kind of just handling those difficult situations.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
You can't blow up at people, even though, there are people that definitely, as we know, get political here.
Yeah, we've all been there. So what do you think people get wrong about, say, working, like either being a photographer or just kind of working in the newspaper world or for the AP? What do you think people get wrong about shooting for that world?
I think in general, any photography is like, and it's sort of this problem is everybody has a camera, and it's so easy to take a picture. That is changing the market too, is because, again, everybody has a camera and they can do it themselves, but everybody doesn't have the eye that a photographer has and can see different angles and really tell a story with a photograph. And I think that's a really important thing to emphasize, is that as a professional, you're going to see a better story. And that's what I want. I want my pictures to, if it's not for AP or for a newspaper magazine, my other clients, I want to be able to tell a story with those pictures, and that they can see that. And I think that's as a testament to how I've been able to maintain this freelance career for so long, is that they see that I work it.
I'm going to dig a little bit deeper on that. Because I think so. Part of this podcast is so much about emphasizing visual storytelling. That is so key. I'm glad you mentioned that. What part of the work you think takes it from that next level of picture taker to storyteller?
Well, a couple things I say is like, it's not, people will come up to me, like on the other day I was dealing with these doctors, and this doctor had a Canon Mark, the 5D, the new one. He's like, look what I got. I'm like, it's not what's between your eye and the lens, it's what's between your ears that makes a difference. It's what you see and what's in your brain. It's, you can give a photographer, a good photographer, any camera, and it doesn't matter what camera they have. They can have a Diana camera, they can have a iPhone, they can have a $30,000 Hasselblad. It's what's between the ears that puts that image together, and seeing the light and seeing the story. Mm-hmm. The other kind of thing I joke about is like, so did Shakespeare write with a Bic pen or a Mont Blanc? It doesn't matter. And who knows if Shakespeare actually existed, but it doesn't matter. It was what was in his head, if he actually existed, that got those words down. So in terms of storytelling, I think it's just seeing what is in front of you and trying to interpret a story out of that, I think is how you can accomplish that. I mean, it's just, again, you don't want to stand in one place and take the same picture. You want to be able to move around. And then when you edit it, that's where it comes in is, okay, this picture doesn't tell a story, but this picture tells a much better story.
Yeah, I suppose. And you saw enough in the editing world. I mean, like you're saying, they're coming through fast and furious. You kind of had to make, not split second, but I mean, quick decisions on what works and what doesn't.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, and we also edited film for, we'd have photographers, freelancers and AP staffers, and they'd bring back film, and you'd have to go through it on the light table and pick out pictures. And some of them were story kind of based, but a lot of it was just single based. And that's single based picture. And that's what I still try to, I still want to tell that story, that major story in one picture, because you don't know how it's going to be used. It could be one picture, or it could be 3 pictures, or it could be 10 pictures. It really depends how it's used. And so, and varying stuff, you want the wide shot, you want the medium shot, you want the detail. And again, it depends on the client and what they're looking for. But no matter what, I'm always looking for those different angles, those details.
I've noticed that. Yeah, in the work, I've done a few assignments here and there over the years here in Madison for Reuters, and when you're working for the wire agency, it's different, and you have to have a little bit of a different mindset, because you might only have that one picture.
Exactly.
And it's interesting that you bring that up, because that is like, sometimes you only have the one picture to tell, a day's worth.
No, I mean, and there are plenty of times when I was working for AP, I'd do some wild pictures and edit on the editing floor, because that's not AP's, or AP style or whatever. It's just, but I had the satisfaction that, I thought that was kind of a cool picture. But then, I'm not going to worry about it. That ends on in the trash can. For me, I'm satisfied for myself. So
yeah, that's actually funny you mentioned that. A question I like to ask on the show is, what's your favorite image or story that's never seen the light of day?
I mean, I've been lucky that, I can't remember, how it was edited, but, well, the one funny story, this is when I was an internship at the Fort Lauderdale News Sentinel. I got a picture of, weather feature, and it was a woman, I can't remember if it was a woman or a man, but someone walking with an umbrella and it was shot down a parking lot on a street, and there was arrows going every which way, and they cropped it down to the person walking in the rain, and totally, there was like 4 or 5 arrows pointing different ways. It was just kind of...
It kind of takes all the fun out of the image.
Exactly, yeah, but
Yeah, that's fair. No, I understand that. Okay, so we've talked a lot about kind of your career here in Madison, and I think one of the big parts about it one of the things you've done a lot in Madison is you've shot a lot of athletics, and I want to go into that because you've captured some really incredible images, and it's not as easy as it looks. So you've shot, basketball, football, a lot kind of UW level. What's the mindset as you're a part of those big, crazy sporting events and trying to get those, singular images?
It goes back to looking for that singular image that tells the story. You're just looking for peak action, watching the game. And I mean, you can it's kind of fun, you kind of joke with your fellow photographers, but also you can't cheer during the game. You got to kind of keep your mind on the game, but you got to have a good time. And trust me, there's times when I've missed photos because you're joking around or you're chimping. I hope everybody knows what chimping is, but
we'll assume that the Photo Forward audience knows what we're talking about here.
So, but it's just being persistent, watching the game and knowing, moving around, getting in the right space, right spot, the right time. Basketball, you're pretty much sitting in one spot. But just watching the game. And football, we used to have. I do shoot. That's probably one of the few things I do shoot for AP is sports, and we used to have 2 photographers at a football game. Now we're down to 1 for college, and so you got to hustle from one end zone to the other. And there are times where you miss plays, but you just can't let it get to you. And there are times you miss stuff when there are been big upset victories, and they rush the field, and it's a huge adrenaline rush. But you got to be in there. You can't be shy. You gotta. That's one thing about being a sports photographer. You got to get out there and I mean, when those field stomping crushes happen, it's crazy. But you get out there and you do it.
Yeah. Were you always able to do that, or how did you get more comfortable putting yourself into those situations?
It's just I don't know. Maybe it's some innate click in my brain. It's like, no, I got to. This is where the actions happen. You got to be there. I'll tell you a funny story. One time there was a Wisconsin basketball game. It was Wisconsin. They were playing. I can't remember if it was Michigan State, but. Wisconsin was the underdogs. Michigan State was ranked 1 or 2 high up, and one of the Wisconsin players sunk a ball which tied the game, but it tied the game. But I thought he won it, so I ran onto the court, and it went into overtime. It was an overtime. And so, I look around, but I got the picture, but then I got back to my seat. So, but that's how enthusiastic I am. You got to, there was nothing happened of it, but
sure, you kind of have to err on the side of getting the picture as opposed to missing it. Sort of.
Exactly. No, that's There are
yeah. How do you distinguish your work? Let me put that another way. How do you make work that's stronger or different than the people next to you at some of these sporting events? Because everybody's got the same gear. Everybody's generally in the same spot. How do you distinguish your work? How do you make something different, make something better?
You're just pushing yourself. I mean, and there are times when everybody, we all have exactly the same picture by nanoseconds. But then there are other times well, I didn't get that. Why didn't I get that? But he got that. Or just vice versa. At times I got that, but they didn't get that. And so it just, you miss some, you don't miss some. You just, again, you're always pushing yourself.
Yeah. And you kind of have that, there might be a little bit of a competitive nature.
Oh, there definitely is. Oh, yeah. I mean, again, we're doing the chimping thing where I see, I got it. Oh, I didn't get it. Both ways. Yeah.
Yeah. and keep in mind, guys, this is happening at, national sport level, everybody's doing it.
Oh, everybody's doing it. Yeah.
Even everybody covering the pit at the White House is probably seeing what they got. Okay, so we've covered a lot of your work kind of at the AP, what people maybe get wrong about being a freelancer and that kind of editorial world. I want to go a little bit into kind of, because I know you've helped me out on a number of occasions with pricing our work. And that's a really touchy thing for a lot of people, but it's important because nobody's talking about it, but it's there. What's your kind of process for thinking about valuing and pricing your work, say for an editorial client or for a commercial client?
Well, I think it varies so much, but especially when I get a cold call from someone, I'm like, "Do you have a budget for this?" And
so you start with what's your budget, kind of?
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah. I mean, I ask about the project and, what do you want out of this and what's your usage out of this? You ask a lot of questions, then you get down to, and you want to set that up right off the bat because you don't want to, oh, this is a great project, let me do it. And then, you start shooting it and like, well, you're only going to pay me this much for it? Why am I? So you want to set that up initially so that you're not disappointed. The client is disappointed. Like, oh, you send them a bill for, whatever. And they're like, no, we never pay that. So you want to make sure you set that up right off the bat.
Have you been there before?
I'm not a guy with I'm not out there doing free work. I've got to watch my bottom line. I have to pay my health insurance. I got to pay, mortgage. I have things, and I know I just got married last week, so I have a family that but I've been doing this for a long time. So you have to keep that in perspective that you are a business person.
So what goes into your process when you're kind of, say, building out an estimate for a client? Is it the time? Is it the complexity? I mean, the usage? How do you kind of balance all that with also getting the bid? Because it doesn't help you if you don't get the project.
Right. And that's happened where I haven't got this stuff. But I mean, you kind of know what market value is, what the market accepts, and it's the scope of the work. And how usage is a big thing. And
let's dive in a little more on that.
Well, I mean, again, and most people want, they want multiple usage. So you have to explain to them, or they'll start out, we just want it for our brochure. Well, yeah, but you're probably going to use it for this, or you probably, okay, you're right, and there's a little bit of education with every client that is going to use this stuff that, and you get these, well, this is totally off the subject, but I don't know why, but you get these calls and like, oh, I like your picture. Can we use it? And we'll give you credit. Like, no. And I mean, recently I had, again, I'm totally off your question, but I recently had one where it was a commercial client called me, said this, and I had a nonprofit, and the nonprofit said, "Oh yeah, we'll pay you." And the commercial was like, "What? No, we're not going to." Or they were going to offer me, $25. I'm like, no.
Has that changed over time? You think that with
no, you still get those calls like, "Oh, we'll give you credit, or we'll give you $25." Like, no, yeah.
So kind of going back, so we talked about kind of the usage that goes into it. How do you think about that overall number that you put out to them? How do you balance that? Do I need the gig, or do I need to value it at what, say, I think it might be worth, in quotes?
Well, I mean, I think I sort of base it on my cost of business and what I know I can, what's going to be workable for me. If the bid doesn't accept it, I'm not going to worry about it. If it's accepted, I'm happy.
Really? So you're okay with losing out on a bid if you know it's right?
It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen.
That's important, Nick. I think because, younger photographers, people starting out, even myself, I know earlier on and still to this day, it's sometimes very tempting to bid a project just so you can get it. How do you not do that? How do you stay strong to your gut on price?
I guess I'm just been very lucky and fortunate that if I miss that one job, it's not gonna hurt me. So just you move on. Yeah, it's a rough thing to go through, but you got to stay strong. And we want all photographers to stand up for their rights, basically, that you are a valued client, valued photographer, valued, that you have to value yourself. If they're not going to accept it, and okay, so they go down the street with a guy with camera or a professional. It's like, okay,
Yeah, you have to stand true to what you kind of know about your work.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think so that comes to also to educating younger photographers and people starting out about, this is what photography is worth, I think. And so there's all sorts of groups online of people talking about, say, project bids or kind of explaining what they're going through. And I think for me, that's been really helpful to see, oh, this is a photographer that I know and is say on my sort of level of skill and style. And, oh, that's what they're charging. Interesting. It forces you to reevaluate your own pricing model a little bit.
I'd agree with that.
Now we've talked about money. Now we need to talk about keeping balance in your life as a freelancer. And I don't think anyone does it perfectly, and some don't even do it well. But how do you find balance or counterbalance, say, between your work as a freelancer and just trying to be a sane human?
It's being a freelancer is being on a roller coaster. It's up and down. It's feast or famine, and at times you got to take the feast so that you can famine, so you can survive the famine. And it can be crazy. And if I'm as I said, I just got married recently, and she's a saint. She is a former journalist. She switched careers. Now she's a nurse, but she kind of understands the whole, I have to be away for this long, but my also I feel is like, okay, there are times where I'm gone, but there are also times that I am, I'm here. I'm doing whatever needs to be done. Yeah. I'm part of the family. I'm part of the, helping out. And
what do you do during those downtimes? Because those happen to us all. Like, how do you approach downtime as a freelancer?
I always find something to do. Again, it's kind of like I can't sit still. Some of it might be sitting at the computer a little bit much, but there's always stuff to do. Might be around the house. It might be taking some extra long bike rides. That's sort of a segue too. I think it's also very important to maintain your health as a freelancer. That's something I preach a lot is, as a freelancer, you need to make sure you have that time to exercise and maintain your health, eating well, because you're self-employed. If you're sick, who's going to fill in for you? And I've been very lucky. There haven't been many times where I've had to call a client saying, I'm down. But maintaining that your health is really, really important, because it can be draining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we put ourselves in enough strain as is. So when you're not putting yourself into these places, you're not lugging around 80 pounds of gear and all that. You do have to manage your being. Take care of yourself.
It's really important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So for you, it's been exercise.
Exercise. Yeah. That's again. Yeah. As you said, you're carrying all kinds of gear around, and there's a huge hill on the University of Wisconsin. I do work for University of Wisconsin, and there's this huge hill, and sometimes I got to carry a cart up the huge hill, and it's you're huffing and puffing, but
the old Bascom Hill grind.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good thing. It's to me, that's a challenge. That's I love challenges. It's like, okay.
Yeah, and you have to be ready to rise to them.
Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. On a future episode, I definitely want, there's some people I want to talk to about kind of the mental health aspect of being a freelancer, being a photographer on that. But I think what you're saying about the physical is equally important. People underestimate how much insurance actually is when you're not employed by somebody.
Right. Exactly.
All right, so Andy, we've covered a lot of ground here, and honestly, I can say that since I moved to Madison, you've been one of those people kind of helping me along as a freelancer, whether it's, we've covered basketball games together, and you've been kind of nudging like, hey, think about it this way, go look over here, or news events, kind of stuff like that. What do you see as mistakes that younger photographers are making, or kind of people less experienced, people just getting into it? What do you see what kind of mistakes do you see younger photographers make?
I don't know about mistakes, but I think it's just you need to be inquisitive. Look at what other people are doing, how other photographers are working it, evaluate what they're doing. I mean, that's, when I look at pictures, I'm always deconstructing pictures to see what they do, how they light that, or how they get that position. What'd they do to do that, to get that angle or whatever?
Do you do that when you're kind of on a similar assignment with other photographers and see?
Oh, yeah. Heck yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. I definitely watch other photographers. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think I was saying that earlier. I was like, oh, man, they got that angle. Or no, I've got the better angle. I'm always checking like, oh, yeah, that makes better sense to get over there, or yeah.
Yeah, I had a similar thing just recently. It was covering the student walkout protest, and everyone was marching down Washington Avenue all the way to the Capitol. And I wanted to get something different, a different angle kind of thing. And so I walked my way up to the top of the AC Hotel. And I got up to the top of there, and it was a nice view. It was great. And I was like, I kind of glance around, and I kind of look to my right, and all of a sudden I see Steve Apps, a State Journal photographer, on the top of the Capitol with his big ol' lens looking straight down Washington Avenue, and then I'm like, man, that was it. That was the angle.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
And I could have, and part of me goes, well, you could just go over there. You had time, but you kind of had to do something a little different. Otherwise, you're just copycatting what somebody else is doing.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, sometimes you have to. I mean, because there's the better angle. That's a great angle, but it's like, and you kind of feel bad. Like, are you doing that? Are you following him? Are you shadowing him? Are you stalking that photographer? But, I think pretty much in this photo community, we're all pretty friendly, and I hope we don't come down on anybody because I've been in other media markets where, like, oh my God, you can't shoot here. This is my spot, and because I came up with this spot. I'm like, well, no, I have a mind too. I can see that this is a good angle. So,
no, I don't think we've gotten in any scrums here in Madison yet.
No.
All right. Well, we're gonna come back here and finish off the episode with a few quick lightning round style questions, just to wrap things up. All right, Andy, here we are with the lightning round of questions. Here we go. Hopefully this isn't too painful. What's the one thing in your bag that you never leave home without?
My camera. No, I mean, probably light. Light is important. It might be a handheld. It might be I have monolight strobes, but to me, that's kind of one way to make yourself stand out a little bit is understanding light and using light to your advantage. Is again, I don't know if you're competing against the guy with camera, but the guy with camera has a pop-up flash, and I want to be able to have my flash off camera. There are times where you have to have it on camera, but but yeah, I think using light.
I like that. What do you do outside of photography that kind of recharges you?
And we were talking about it a little bit earlier, just, getting out. I love it. A couple of years ago, I was reading an article on forest breathing, getting out and being in nature. That might be riding your bike. That might be taking a walk. Whatever, just to get out and clear your brain.
Yeah. Very important. I can second that.
And that, doesn't matter if it's, summer, winter, whatever. You got to get out and clear that brain. It really does recharge you.
As an aside here, I was just reading something about the amount of light that actually hits your body compared to, say, a sunny day versus a cloudy day versus inside. Something like a sunny day is 10,000 lux, a cloudy day is 6,000 lux, and the brightest sun in an indoor office setting is 100. Yeah, our bodies need light. They really do. What drives you or pushes you to improve your skills as a photographer?
Just being the best that you can be. I mean, looking at other photographers, listening to some podcasts. Again, like I said, I'm always deconstructing. It is kind of looking through Instagram. It's kind of addiction. You look through it and seeing how they do it.
Mm-hmm. Without being too much of a copycat.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm always looking for ideas.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What advice would you give to a student graduating from university or college that's considering a career in photography or photojournalism?
That's a really tough and good question. Networking is really important to be in contact with people, call people. Yeah, just be in contact with people that are in the business. Do ride-alongs, do assisting if you can. I mean, that's one thing I wish I had done early on. I wish I had been an assistant when I was young, but I didn't, and I kind of regret that. That I think that would have been a really good thing to do is be an assistant. But and pushing yourself, you get down on yourself. It's a tough business. I mean, because like I've said so many times, there are so many cameras and photographers out there that you've got to push yourself to stand out, and communicate with your clients. And one thing I harp on is don't do your administrative things. Don't let that stuff lack. Getting your bills on time. Don't let those lapse. Keeping up on your books.
Yeah, that's valuable. Yeah, as a freelancer, treating yourself as a business. So what's the most important thing you've said no to in your career?
Got an email wanting to know if I want to take pictures of a nude thing. I said no.
I like that.
I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like no.
Knowing where your limits are.
They wanted the film. That was it. They wanted the film.
It's like giving away your raw images now.
Yes.
All right. And last but certainly not least, where can people see more of your work online and connect with you?
I'm at manisphoto.com, and my email address is andy@manisphoto, manisphoto.com.
And do you have an Instagram page people can follow you at?
Andy Man Photo is my Instagram.
Andy Man Photo. Well, Andy Man, thank you for coming in on the Photo Forward podcast
Excellent. It's been really
today.
enjoyed being with you, Ben. Y'all have a good one. Thanks. Cool.
Enjoying listening to the Photo Forward podcast? Want to hear more thought-provoking, creative visual storytellers like Andy here? Well, this is where you come in. We want to get the word out as wide as possible about Photo Forward and reach as many listeners as possible. And the best way to do that is through reviews and recommendations on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you consume your podcasts. If you want to support more engaging and intimate conversations with photographers, videographers, and storytellers the world over, head on over to the Photo Forward page on iTunes and drop a review or even a rating. It means a ton to growing the show, and I personally read through each and every review to make this show the best damn visual storytelling podcast out there. Thank you all for listening, and see you soon.